This incident occurred when I was 11 years old and is still to this day the scariest thing that has ever happened to me. The school holidays had just begun and my friend and I were having a sleepover at his house. To keep his identity confidential, I'll just call him Matt in this story. This was on a Saturday night and it was a very common thing for the two of us to do, as we loved it and always had a good time. For this particular night, Matt suggested that we sleep in the tent in the backyard, as it was a nice night and would be fun. It also would allow us to talk more without his parents hearing from a different room. I agreed, and we set up the tent that afternoon. Now, Matt's house was right next to a park, literally. His backyard fence had a door that could be opened, and if you were to walk through, you'd be in the park. We'd love to go to the park to have a kick of the footy and play cricket. It was something we always did every time we were at his house. So once the tent was set up, we headed straight out of his backyard to the park with the football and cricket equipment. As we walked through the number of small trees that made up a kind of mini forest in the corner, I could hear that there were a couple of people in the playground. We walked through the playground towards the oval with the goalposts and the cricket pitch, and as we got closer, I noticed there were a couple of parents hanging around the playground while the children ran around. However, there was a man who looked to be in his 40s, just sitting alone on the bench, away from everyone else. I thought this was quite odd. As we walked past him, I unfortunately made eye contact with him. After a couple of seconds, I decided to break the awkwardness by giving him a wave and a smile. He smiled back, but something wasn't right about it. It wasn't a warm, friendly smile that you're used to. It looked menacing, like he had malicious intent. Needless to say, it really creeped me out, and I immediately looked away from him and walked at a brisker pace to the oval. Once we reached the cricket pitch, I told Matt about the man, and he said he noticed him, but didn't see me wave at him or get any creepy vibes from him. He told me not to worry about it, and that's what I did. We just played cricket, and I kicked the footy for around about an hour, and I would occasionally look back at the playground. But every time I did, he wasn't there. I figured he must have left. After about an hour, it was getting darker, and we decided it was time to go back to the house for dinner and to play some Xbox. By this time, the man was completely out of my mind. As we walked through the playground, we noticed that everyone had left, and we were actually now the only two people there. Or so I thought at least. We exited the playground and then entered the mini forest I mentioned earlier, which was no more than 10 meters away from his house. Through the loud crunch of the leaves from our footsteps and the clang of the cricket stumps on the bat, I heard the voice of a man behind us.
Did you have fun, boys?
I turned around and my heart sank as I realised it was the same man from earlier on. I could now see that this guy was huge, probably around 6'4", and he had a solid build. I looked at Matt and could see that he was now uncomfortable with the situation. We had two options, to either get to the house as quickly as possible or just try to play it cool. I decided to go with the latter. We did have fun. How about you? The next thing he then said still sends shivers down my spine to this day.
Not exactly, but I'm sure I can have some fun now.
Straight after he said that, I could see his face forming the same horrifying smile from earlier on. I felt like my chest was about to explode. I turned to Matt and we both bolted to the house, opening the fence door and locking it behind us. We looked through the peephole and could see him standing ahead. He hadn't moved, and as impossible as it seemed, it looked like he was just staring at us, or at least in our general direction. Matt and I went straight inside and locked all the doors immediately. Unfortunately, his parents were still out, and the only way we could inform them was by calling them. We sat down for a few minutes to gather our thoughts and ultimately decided that there was actually no point in telling Matt's parents or the police, as we didn't believe there was anything that could be done and we didn't want to worry his parents over something like this. We decided to take our minds off it by playing Xbox for hours and then having some dinner. Matt's parents got home late, and just after they arrived, we decided it was time to go to bed. We said goodnight without mentioning a word of what happened no less than 3 hours ago. I asked Matt if we should just sleep inside now, rather than outside in the tent. He said that it was virtually impossible that the man would still be lurking around hours later. What could he possibly have wanted so badly to keep him around that long? Now you may say that we were crazy for sleeping outside after what happened, but we had gone to a lot of effort to put the tent up, and Matt was right. It seemed very unlikely that the man would still be around. So we entered the tent and settled down. We talked for about what I remember being half an hour before drifting to sleep. At some point late in the night, I was awoken by the sound of a loud scraping on the fence, followed by a thump on the ground. I checked my phone to see that it was 1 a.m. Matt was still asleep. Then I heard footsteps. They were coming from the fence that led to the park. They were getting closer and louder before they suddenly stopped from what felt like a meter from the tent. I frantically tried to wake Matt up without making too much noise. He eventually awoke and was about to tell me off before I gestured for him to shut up. I pointed in the direction of where I heard the footsteps and whispered to him what I heard. Matt told me that I was just hearing things, but I insisted that I wasn't. Eventually I could see that he was getting fed up, and he said he was going to go outside to prove that no one was actually there. Matt got up and headed for the tent door, unzipping it. I begged him not to, but it was too late. I heard his footsteps around the side of the tent. Then there was silence. The silence lasted probably about 3 seconds before I heard the most disturbing scream come from Matt's mouth. I exited the tent to see the horrifying sight of Matt being grabbed by a man. And through the moonlight, I could see that it was the same man from earlier. Before I could even comprehend what I was seeing, I heard the back door open and was relieved to see Matt's parents, led by his 6'9" father. The man instantly let go of Matt and sprinted to the fence, climbing over and vanishing. Matt's dad followed to check if the man had left, and then came back to say that he was nowhere in sight. We called the police and they arrived minutes later, but it made no difference. The man was gone. All we could do was describe him and claim everything that had happened. My parents arrived 20 minutes later and I slept at my house that night. I still wonder what horrific things may have happened to us if Matt's parents didn't wake up, and it still worries me to know that the man is still out there. Matt and I never slept in that tent outside again, and would only ever go back to the park again in broad daylight.